Some of those where they help the animals.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
a lot of those videos where
But
they try to help the deer.
I couldn't read it. Picked up. Yeah, I seen that too. I couldn't read it. He picked up that little kid.
Well, let's go.
Skin.
I'd like to call the October 11th meeting of the Zoning Commission to order. Will you call the roll, please?
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Sable.
Here.
Ms. Himmler.
Here.
Mr. Pat.
Here.
Mr. Creedy.
Here.
Our first item of business is to approve the minutes which were sent to all the members of the September 13th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Motion and seconds. You got those? Okay. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, then would you please call the roll?
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Sable.
Here.
Yes,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes. I said here too.
It's my
Ms.
fault.
Himmler.
Yes.
Mr. Pat.
Yes.
Mr. Creedy.
Yes.
Motion carries. We have no items of old business and one item of new business, which is a zone change request from A4 Rural Residential to R3 PUD Residential for a property located at 3331 and 3233 Percentum Road. And Daryl, I'm going to let you walk us through the overview of that.
The subject property consists of two adjoining lots with a combined size of approximately 9.5 acres. Both currently zoned A4 rural residential and used for single-family purposes. The applicant is requesting a change in zoning from A4 to R3 PUD residential plan unit development for these parcels in order to develop the site as villa-style multifamily residential. The proposed development would consist of 66 single-story units throughout 10 buildings, 5 8-unit buildings, 3 6-unit, and 2 4-unit. Each unit would have its own attached two-car garage and driveway. There will be one private U-shaped drive with 2 access points on Percentum Road. Sylvania Township Land Use Plan recommends transitional uses for this part of the township. Transitional uses allow less intense commercial uses, such as offices, for example, and two-family and multifamily residential uses as a buffer between the more intense general commercial uses, such as Lowe's, and low-intensity single-family uses. Corresponding zoning districts for transitional uses are C1, C4, R3, and R4. The recommended residential density for a transitional use is 10 to 15 units per acre. The proposed development is 6.9 units per acre. Section 2002 of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution dictates a maximum of 7 units per acre for an R3 PUD. Section 2002B of the zoning resolution states that a maximum of 40% of the gross parcel acreage shall be devoted to coverage by buildings, structures, street, driveway, or parking. The site plan indicates impervious coverage to be 3.85 acres of the 9.48 gross acreage. This amounts to 40.6% coverage. The applicant is requesting that this requirement be waived to allow for the additional 0.6%. Section 2002C addresses open space requirements in a residential PUD. A minimum of 15% of the gross parcel acreage, none of which shall be part of any yard, shall be allocated to usable, accessible, and consolidated open space, which may include recreational areas, ponds, detention areas, retention areas, or natural areas. The applicant's site plan denotes 1.7 acres, or 20% of the gross acreage, as open space. This includes a detention pond and large landscaped open area in the center of the development. The proposed site plan meets all other requirements of the zoning resolution regarding setbacks, parking, etc. Zoning staff recommends approval of the requested zone changes for the parcels located at 3331 and 3233 Percentum Road from A4 to R3 PUD for the following reasons. 1, the proposed zone change is compatible with the recommendation of the Sylvania Township Land Use Plan. 2, apart from the 40% maximum coverage requirement, the proposed zone change meets the conditions of the Township Zoning Resolution. Staff recommends approval of the waiver request by the applicant for the 40.6% coverage based on the density of the proposed development at 6.9 units per acre, coming in just under the maximum density, and the proposed development's open space at 20%, coming in over the minimum requirement of 15%. 3, the proposed PUD is harmonious with the neighboring uses and should have minimal, if any, unfavorable impact upon surrounding properties. 4, lastly, staff recommends approval of the zone change request be provisional upon the 43 conditions outlined in the Lucas County Plan Commission staff report of September 27, 2017.
You've also given us some pictures of some similar development.
Right, the project on Bancroft in Springfield Township.
Okay. So this is the same property that somebody proposed a multi-story apartment building on
Yeah, it was
last year.
approximately a year ago.
That didn't make it all the way through the process.
Right.
Okay.
And then there was another proposal. It was back in March and only went as far as the Lucas County Plan Commission, and then they withdrew their request.
Okay. And the only real waiver is on the density issue.
Right, on the 40.6
Okay.
coverage.
Is there a representative of the applicant who would like to address the zoning commission? Anybody who comes to the microphone, make sure you state your name and address because this is being recorded.
My name's Don Feller with Feller Finch & Associates, 1683 Woodlands Drive, Maumee, Ohio. Probably a lot of what I'm going to say is just a repeat of what Daryl already said, but just quickly kind of go through the development a little bit, just to, again, describe what they're proposing there. As I said, we're proposing an R3 PUD, approximately 9.8 acres on the west side of Persentum. It's just north of and adjacent to the Lowe's property. There is C2 and C4 zoning directly to the west of this property. There's C2 to the south, the commercial that is the Lowe's property. There's R3 to the east, across the street to the east is R3. And then to the north is A4 there's actually 3 lots that abut this property to the north. It appears to us, and we believe that it makes a reasonable transition from the pretty heavy, dense commercial use to the south to the residential use to the north, being that it's a single-story, relatively low-density development as multifamily developments go. The developer's proposing a single-story villa development. As Daryl indicated, there'd be 5 8-unit buildings, 3 6-unit buildings, and 2 4-unit buildings for a total of 66 units. As you mentioned, previously a project had come through there that had been approved by the Zoning Commission that actually had, I think, more than twice as many units as what we're proposing here. So again, as Daryl mentioned, we're proposing a density of 7 units per acre, which is almost half of what the master plan would say would be allowable for this use. I think it's 10 to 15 units per acre is what they recommend or suggest, and we're just slightly under 7 units per acre. As he mentioned, the requirement is to have 15% of open space. We've provided 20%, more than what's required. We are requesting a slight waiver of the 40.6 versus 40% for the coverage. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Other questions from members of the commission? And this is intended to be rental property?
Yes.
Okay. And you're talking primarily targeting what you call the renters by choice. Somebody gave us that.
Yeah.
Somebody elaborate on renters by choice? What does that mean?
People who are choosing not to own property, have very few school-age children, tend to be older but can be younger professionals, and, household size is smaller than the population and just choose not to own a home.
Right. Yeah. Mr. McCarthy's done several developments of this type before, and that's basically what they're finding is that the renters are, many of them are professional people, single professionals, young couples with no kids, older couples that retired and don't want to bother owning property. In fact, they could get, if you want more information, they have more information on demographics and whatnot of the renters that occupy. Surprisingly, the demographics are, I believe the median income is in the, 70,000?
Stronger than the general
Yeah, it's higher median income than the general population in the area.
Any other questions from the zoning commission? Okay, hearing none, thank you. If there are people who would like to address the request of the zoning commission, I'm going to ask you to come up to the microphone and state your name and address, and try to keep your comments brief but to the point. But we're open to hear anybody if you'd like to make a comment.
My name is Hirsch Feinblatt, 6901 Ridgewood Trail. On these type of proposals, who's looking at traffic flow patterns and also water distribution?
Daryl, you want to take a stab at that one?
As far as traffic, the applicant will, if the Lucas County engineer deems it necessary, will conduct a traffic impact study.
I mean, there's two ways out of there. Either onto Persentum to Central, or Persentum to Ridgewood through through Carytown North. We already have a lot of traffic going through Carytown North because that's the shortcut to Lowe's. And I mean, this to me is very disturbing. The other issue is water distribution. At peak times, our water pulses. So that means that the water department is not meeting the peak demand. So when you add more people, the water requirement or the water demand goes up, and who's looking at water supply?
Do you know that answer, Mr. Feller? Is that a loop through there, or is that a dead end going down Persentum, or we don't know that?
Our water line will be looped, and I believe that Persentum, I don't know for sure, but I believe Persentum is likely to loop through.
From McCord probably to Central through
Probably through
Carytown.
Ridgewood and right on out to McCord, I would imagine.
I just know that
for
versus
sure.
before that when there's a dead end, a stick, they obviously can't pressurize as much. Once they get a loop, the flow, they can increase. I don't know the water line, whether that's a county.
Usually if it's looped, it's generally not an issue.
Yeah.
It may be a case, and I don't know this, we haven't gotten into the design necessarily yet, but it may be a case where Ridgewood is dead-ended. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know what the water.
Theirs may come from McCord and stop, and yours may come from Central, but we don't know.
We might be coming, and we may.
But that would be done with the Lucas County engineer.
Sanitary engineer, looks like sanitary engineer will deal with that, but I mean, we might not even affect them if it's not looped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that comes back to similar things we've discussed in the past, that water, traffic, sewer, floodplains, those types of things. Those are all handled with the engineers. People are a lot more skilled at doing that than this board.
Is there anything
Plans
else?
for this project will have to be submitted to the counties, the engineer, county engineer, sanitary engineer, the EPA, they all have to review these, approve them before they can go to the project.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe. I mean, these proposals get made, and the densities are important, and then if it gets approved, it's like, okay, so we just add on to the water that we already have, and we'll just add on to the electrical supply that we already have, and yeah, we have a road that goes out to McCord, we have a road that goes out to Central, so the end.
Do you have any other comments?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the zoning commission? Same deal, microphone, name and address.
Hi, I'm Mary Kay Comer, and I live at 7041 Barrett Road. Our property backs up to this land, and I really just want to say that what he was saying about the water, I agree with, because we experience the same thing at our house. And I do have a question. Since our property backs up to that, I'm assuming there's going to be a fence put up, or can that be addressed at all? And I also want to comment on one of the slides that was up there that had all the points as to why it should be approved. Point number 3 should have minimal, if any, unfavorable impact upon surrounding properties. I'm not sure I agree with that. Maybe you would elaborate on that. What is your definition of an unfavorable impact? My definition is the wildlife that comes into our yard. When I sit at my table and I see the deer and all the other animals, that's going to be gone. All the greenery, the wonderful trees. You know, I moved to Sylvania 30 years ago, and I loved it. I loved the small town feel. I felt like I was almost in the country. It was just small town feel. I loved it. I told my husband not too long ago I want to move because it's no longer the small town feel. There is so much traffic. When it takes half an hour to get from one side of the town to the other, when Sylvania is not large, and everywhere you look, every green space is being built on with villas and more villas. And it's like, what are we trying to do with our city? Is getting more tax money more important than saving part of the environment? That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
I got it. Darryl, what's the landscape requirement for an R3 setback buffer? And they got a 30-foot building, 40-foot building line on the west side and a 30-foot on the north.
Right.
If that stays natural vegetation, that should be a pretty decent good buffer. Is there a fence requirement?
There is no fencing requirement for residential abutting other residential.
Can you still say something?
Just a minute till he's finished. Were you going to answer something, Darryl?
You can go up there while he's looking at it. You might answer.
Again, there's no required landscape buffer. Residential abutting residential.
But with a PUD, isn't there typically some kind of a landscape plan presented as part of the development?
Well,
and I know we've seen that on other drawings here they talk about.
Right, and they've got on their site plan landscape.
And I have to look through all the 43 conditions that were put on it.
I believe on the large plan it indicates the trees, what type of trees.
Not really.
No, there's not.
Ours does have anything in it.
Yeah.
Look at your big plan. You got a back of apartment 40 foot off my property. There's no. Where are you going to put trees? It's not even, I think it's 30 foot. 30 foot. Where are you going to put trees? You have to put.
Go ahead.
I'm Rick Homer. I live at 7041 Barrett Road. And first I want to know where the 40.6% of it looks to me there's a lot more than 40% of the property being used for buildings. And there's no green space. I mean, I'm going to have a 30 foot off my back of my property. I'm going to have some apartment's back door. You know, you guys already turned down the senior living, which had 3 acres. 3 of them acres was going to be left for green space. And you turned it, but then you're thinking about letting them do something like this?
We actually didn't turn that down.
Well, so you guys didn't know.
Trustees did.
Down the road, okay, but still, it's...
But we had a lot of pushback from neighbors worried about traffic, where that was almost 2.5 times the density as far as people. So this is 66 units.
Right.
That was 216. That's a lot more cars, but he was leaving you some green space because he was going up.
Right.
So this room was full. So we got to, this is the double-edged sword.
I understand, I understand all that.
Less units, less traffic,
All right.
less water.
Well, and they're talking like they don't have to put a fence up. There better be a fence up there between our property and that. There has to be.
There is no requirement for
Oh,
fence.
Lowe's put one up.
Against
Lowe's put one up between them and the field.
That's commercial abutting residential. This is two residentials abutting each other. Do you have a fence between you and both neighbors on either side of you?
No, I don't have an apartment next to me.
That's a residence. This is a residence.
This is not a residence, an apartment complex.
That people live in. They're not doing business there. They're not selling anything out there. It's not a commercial business.
I don't understand Spain Township.
Is there anybody else who would like to address the zoning commission?
Janice Miller, 6845 Ridgewood Trail, Toledo, Carytown North. Number of my homeowners are here tonight. We were here with the prior proposed building. I think that the concern is, again, it's the concentration and it's the traffic issue. And then obviously for some people, it's the aesthetics and how it affects what their home has been for 30 plus years. And you all have to be able to empathize with that. Question, how big are the apartment or the residence sizes? Is it 1,600 feet, 1,200 feet, 1,800 feet living space? Do we know that?
Yeah, the living area is about 1,100 square feet, and it has a 500 square foot attached garage storage area, so total rooms and
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you say that loud enough for the people back there to hear you? I'm sorry. It's 1,100 square feet living space, then the garage, and so that's basically the size, Sandy. Total is 1,600 feet, okay? And this is not geared towards any particular demographic as far as age or income. Is it just a general rental villa type thing?
It's geared towards the 55 and over.
Okay, all right.
And the starting rent on the project they put up on the board, Orchard Creek, which you're doing out the bank club.
Right.
That's starting at $1,397 per month.
Okay. Did you hear that, Sandy? It's $1,395 a month is the starting rental for those units. And it's geared towards over 55, but you could be young professionals as well, correct?
Could I ask the gentleman who was answering the questions to step to the microphone and identify himself, just so we make sure we have an accurate record?
Yes, I am Brian McCarthy with McCarthy Builders, the applicant.
Okay.
So, yeah, just to reiterate, kind of we were going back and forth. The units are 1,100 square foot of living area, and they do feature an attached garage, which is another 500 square feet, and that's for for parking cars and for storage. The starting rental rate, based on what we've done at Orchard Creek, those start at $1,397 per month. So let's call it $1,400 per month. And we expect the same here, if not more.
And this is the second or third development of this kind that you've done in the Lucas County? Or
This will be our, well, if proposed, if approved, this will be our fourth here in the area.
Ms. Miller, do you have anything else to?
I guess the biggest continuing issue, as Hirsch mentioned earlier, is the traffic flow that automatically happens going through Carytown North. I know it's a public thoroughfare. I know it's Lucas County and Sylvania Township, but the issue continues to be the frequency of speeding, the frequency of traffic, the frequency of disregard related to going through I've had trees hit, we've had mailboxes hit. Because we have a significant curve, we have people that will race through and try and get to a stop sign before other people get to it from another area in the thing. We have people going 45 to 55 miles an hour down Ridgewood Trail to McCord, or coming from the other direction from McCord towards the middle of the association property on the curves. We've had people hit a giant poplar tree there in the past. The issue is, a lot of it is the traffic issue, the congestion and the frequency of traffic through that area. I know that we're not going to get speed bumps. I know that we're not going to ever make it gated. It's a public thoroughfare. We just want maybe some assistance or some sensitivity to the reality that when you add more people, and this is 132 more vehicles that could potentially be going through there because it's 66 units with 2 parking spots, that, at least put speed limit signs up. Maybe put a stop sign at, say, for example, at Post Oak where it comes in from Kelker that would slow people down going through on Ridgewood Trail, going towards McCord, or going towards the curve so they don't hit my trees, they don't hit our mailboxes. I've called the township police many times, complaining about this, and there really isn't a whole lot of resolution to it, and that continues to be a really big issue for us. I'm sensitive to the fact that people are concerned about losing the green space and the wildlife and the trees that are a treasure. The reality is where their building has expanded past what they had when they built there 30 years ago. The same way that things are changing where I live from when I bought 18 years ago, I'm losing my space behind me. They've taken out all the trees in front of my house on Ridgewood Trail, and now they're building and taking out. It was like a massacre watching them take the trees out behind me for the Cary Woods project. And it's going to continue. And I understand that that's the reality of living in an urban area. It's just I would like to express the frustration that you have with people that have built and treasure those things, and it's like there's no one wants to hear. They just see that it might benefit a tax base, and I appreciate that, but it's a concern. Thanks.
Is there anybody else who would like to address the zoning commission?
Walt Rager, 3425 Piney Point Drive in Carytown North. I just got a couple of questions. I think you said there's 2 parking spaces in the garage?
Right.
So both cars could be put in without sitting in the driveway? Right. Not that they will, but it could be. The other question I've got is, slips in my mind now. Oh, yeah. These are personal residences, right? So there's no reason to expect that there would be rehabilitation services with doctors, nurses, and that kind of thing coming here, adding to the traffic density. Okay.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak to the zoning commission?
I'm George Blossom, 3428 Amberwood in Carytown North. I just want to say that I'm generally in favor of this, but only because it could be a lot worse. What we put down the last 2 projects that came here was 2 or 3 times the traffic that this is going to be. And sooner or later, something is going to be built there. And I think this is probably the least obtrusive thing. I agree totally with what everybody said about the racetrack through our neighborhood in Carytown North. We don't really want speed bumps. We probably wouldn't ask for them anyway, at least I wouldn't. But I think this is the lesser of the evils that have been presented so far for the use of this property. And I think I would go along with it. And also being familiar with the builder involved that builds quality work as far as I know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sandra Wisely, 6857 Ridgewood Trail. Like Jan, I'm around the corner on Ridgewood, and even just backing out, trying to get out of the garage, is difficult because they come zipping around Amberwood and down Ridgewood around the curve, and we're right there. And all of the little gadgets you have on your car now go bing, 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 because fortunately we don't get hit. My main question is, in looking at the little sight scene that we have over here, there's still some blank areas. How much more are you planning to fill in? Or what, is it all, is part of this that I see blank below the site, is that Lowe's?
That's Lowe's.
All right, and on the other side, there's still area that could still be developed. Are we?
I think there's an apartment building behind the old Giant Eagle. No, I think that's full. No.
All right, so are we in for another development, or is this going to be it?
I would say it's difficult to answer that question because it's always, I mean, everything that comes to the zoning commission is at the request of a property owner.
Right.
Okay? And the question for the zoning commission is always primarily, according to the zoning resolution, is this an appropriate use of the land? And it's not, I think Mr. King said, and it's not for us to weigh in on some of these other issues. I mean, certainly we can understand it as a concern in making our decision about whether it's an appropriate use of the land, but the way the steps in the process work is it's already been through proposals to the Lucas County Planning Commission, it's gone through the Sylvania Township zoning people. Obviously the developers, have done some work, putting concepts together and doing some preliminary, work in design. From us, it goes to the trustees. If the trustees would approve it, then it goes back into a rather extensive planning process where details are finalized. For example, out of the Lucas County Planning Commission, they had a list of 43 things, I think it is, that in order for this project to move forward and get the approval to actually begin construction, they're going to have to meet those 43 contingencies. Other things may come up in the course of that process. I mean, a good example would be the project that's going in across from Kingston. We approved that months ago. It took a long time for them to get to where they actually have broken ground under
Now, is that a similar type?
No, not similar to this. No. That was more similar to the one that was turned down, that the multi-story apartment building.
Okay.
It was more similar to that because they were actually on the same agenda.
Well, it's just, I think we all are for the same thing. We'd rather not have it. We understand, but there's still, most of us have been there too long, and we are of an age, and having another 130 cars go through possibly a day.
And I would not say that anybody up here is insensitive to that. But the primary question for us is the person who owns the property has a chance to sell the property, and the person who wants to buy the property is saying, this is what I would like to do with it. Yeah.
Does this have something to do perhaps with maybe re-looking at the master plan for the township and how much you're going to fill it up?
Actually, we are still not in the final stages of the land use plan, and everybody here, I think, sits on different subcommittees of that. But as we finalize that towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, right? That's sort of the timeline we're on. At least in the groups that I have been in, I mean, there is quite a bit of discussion about the desire of residents in Sylvania for planned open space and to keep some of those, like the parks and things, and to make sure that that's, appropriately done, which I think is reflected with, that everything in the zoning resolution does require some open space when there's this kind of a, development. But at least in the subcommittee and some of the rest of you could weigh in, some of the discussions that I've heard is that if you want to keep open spaces, then you really need to allow certain areas to either be denser or to go up. Because if you're going to attract residents and keep a vibrant community, which draws young people and draws, and keeps people, that we want, a good demographic mix of, older, younger, people who want to come here and stay. Mm-hmm. And you want to keep the open space, the way we're going to do that is by having denser things like this or to start building up. I mean, if that was the conversation in the last committee I was in. Now, that has not been written into any final land use plan, and so don't take that as what we're going to say. But as, the planning people look at it, I mean, that's certainly a discussion. How do you keep open space? Mm-hmm. And, obviously it's easier to keep open space as you go west, where there is still more open space. This happens to be 5-6 acre, whatever it is,
Nine.
Yeah, that's surrounded by, commercial, office buildings, some residential, right, that the applicant is asking, I would like to sell my property, and this is what the person who wants to buy it wants to do. And then is that consistent with our current restrictions?
Thank you. I would ask the builder if you could redirect your heavy construction trucks from coming through every day. That would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
John, you wanted to say something?
Just to make an additional note on the Transportation Committee, I know that traffic studies, traffic flow, as things are being developed out, that is definitely something, and maybe not at our level here, but these committees consist of multiple township people, city or Lucas County folks who are the sanitary engineers and the transportation managers and all these people who that's their job. And I do know that two big themes we hear: connectivity. People want to be able to be connected with walking trails and biking trails, and in addition to that, they want those green spaces connected, but also traffic flow is a big part of a lot of the conversation that we have. So, please don't think that we set up here and just completely disregard any thoughts to traffic patterns. We know that can be certainly a sore spot and cause some additional pain, but the city and the township and the engineers and the traffic study people, that's their job to make sure when those become a problem or before they become a problem, try to head that off. So, again, not really our duty, but we do hear you.
In the land use plan, as Darrell stated in his report, called for 10 to 15 units per acre on this land. Right. And that was from 2007. So fairly outdated. They were knowing this was going to be a denser area, and now we're looking at 7 units per acre. Like they said, about half. So as the older gentleman stated, that this is the lesser of two evils if I'm in that neighborhood. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but this is the plan from the last one. He didn't have anything on the entire north parcel, woods and open space. But as Mary said, because he was going up. And my thought was we put 216 units or whatever out on Central Avenue on 40 acres. We took up 40 acres where we could have put it on 5 acres. So if we talk about going west, that chewed up a lot of land to me that could have been larger lot residential. Where had we gone up and improved some of these rentals in a high rise, they don't chew up so much land so fast. But these villas do. It looks like the building is bigger than it is because you're seeing the patio and the driveway. So that's labeled under his impervious area of 3.85 acres. But the building is only, what's it come out to, about 4 acres of actual rooftop? Maybe 3. Yeah, I don't have that number here. Yeah, because that would be in the 40% of the 9 acres. So, and being that close to a state highway, we know we're going to have traffic. And I find it hard to believe that many people cut through Carytown when there's a lighted intersection 800 feet away. I did. Wow, I've never sat there, but after the last, on this project, I drove through there, middle of the day, and I didn't sit around and wait for 2-3 hours. But I don't think I passed one car. So it just didn't seem that busy. But
I'm out there with you. I'm out in the country. I'm off of Mitchell. Well, it's not country anymore because since I moved in, there's 4 more plats that have been added to the neighborhood. So I get the I don't like the traffic either. I don't have as much traffic, I'm sure, as you guys do over there as the cut through. But I'm with you. I'm in the front of the subdivision, and now there's times I'm taking my daughter to school in the morning, and I'm sitting there for 6 cars to go by before I can back out my driveway. That's simply part of growth, and I knew when we moved out there that was going to happen. But the point too is, I'll go out on Mitchell, and most of us think that's probably out. That's kind of out in the country. But if a soccer game lets out at Pace Center, if a game lets out at, or if it's just the right time of day, there's times where it's just with growth of a vibrant community, we're going to have traffic, and we're going to have it. And that's what we want, unless we all want to pay double taxes in 10 years. So we have to have some continued growth. But I think appropriate growth
and not to mention, I prefer, these guys have heard me say this before, to approve a local developer or have them apply for these things. The last 2, one was out of New York, and this big high-rise was out of Pennsylvania. So at least you guys can meet or call McCarthy if you want, or call Daryl and say, hey, these are our concerns. We'd like to see some shrubbery. And he's a local guy. He'd probably work with you. These guys from Pennsylvania would not probably answer the phone or get back with you. So we have some options here. We're all local guys. We don't want bad things in the community, and we know that. But like I said, the land use plan is calling for twice as dense as this. So that's just my thought.
In the land use plan meetings open to the public, you want to come in, they'll listen to you. If you have something to say, and if you can help, that's invited. The thing about
a survey out for what people wanted for almost 8-10 months.
It's still out.
It's still
out through November.
Yeah, you can go online and fill out the survey. Do we want more parks? Do we want less parks? More parks equal more taxes. They can't maintain what they have already. So we got to be careful how much open space we wish for, because open space means someone has to maintain it. Those are just my thoughts.
Daryl, I have a question. With the speed on the street, does it take 3/4 of the neighborhood signatures to put speed bumps in, or for a specific sign?
I would have to check with our road superintendent.
I thought it was 3/4.
That sounds about right. And then the
It's
county,
a lot of people.
the county would then do a traffic count. They have
people
a
speeding
set
down the
requirement
street.
of traffic to have the speed bumps.
People speeding down the street, speed bump discourages that, especially if you hit it.
So do stop signs.
You go, the less it is.
There's some discussion on whether speed bumps actually are effective or not.
Well, I think they make more noise. I would never want to be within 3 houses of one, because everybody that does squeaky shocks and other things.
And then they accelerate after.
Difficult for road maintenance and for fire and rescue.
Oh yeah,
too.
the fire department definitely is against them.
Yeah. Snowplows, yeah.
I don't think that anybody, at least that I'm aware of in our association, wants. Sorry.
Right, yeah.
They don't want speed.
Right, okay, yeah. We're off on a different tangent. Is there anybody else who would like to address the zoning commission before we discuss this among ourselves?
I'd just like to ask a simple question, that is, for a short period of time, we had a few more stop signs in the neighborhood, like about 24 hours, and they were taken down again. Why can't those stop signs be there to slow traffic down?
That's beyond us, but you can certainly talk to Daryl and he can tell you the people to talk to.
Yeah.
It's beyond zoning. That's not a zoning issue.
Right. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. You can ask Rob Nash, the road superintendent, about that. There were temporary stop signs? Was it for construction or?
Maybe you can follow up with him on that, Daryl.
Yeah, so you need to get those back.
Yeah. Okay, we're off on tangents here. Is there anything, other comments members of the Zoning Commission would like to offer about the project? I think Mr. Creaky sort of summed it up. We've seen a number of different, well, actually we've only seen two because one got withdrawn. And I think as one of our speakers said, this, is a less dense option than the last one. Yeah. Huh?
There's been a lot of interest in this property.
Right,
so
yeah. And there is an apartment building across the street from it. I guess I would, urge the developers to be sensitive to, buffers with the residentials, but I will trust that will be worked out in the planning process.
Yeah, especially on that north side.
Right.
Brian McCarthy with McCarthy Builders, and I know Mr. Comer was, yeah, absolutely, and we'll put one there. Just want to let you know, it's not a requirement, but we certainly will. But what I don't know is what kind of natural barriers there right now. Is there woods? Yeah, because the property line will have to go on the fence. We want to take as little trees down as possible. So we'll probably put a fence there for you, but keep in mind we may have to take out some trees that are close to the property line to do that. So I'll work with you.
You're going to back up a building 30 foot from property line.
Correct.
So you're not going to have no 40-foot tall cottonwood.
Right. We'll want to take that. Yeah, we'll want to take that down. So yeah, we'll work with you on
those are things that are worked out at the next stage of the process.
Yeah, but you'll have a good screen, you'll have a fence, or you'll have landscaping there. So
we're approving the concept, not necessarily every specific detail at this point, because there's a lot of planning left to go. Any other comments or questions from the members of the Zoning Commission? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second? Did I hear somebody second?
Second.
Mr. King, second. Any other comments? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Creedy?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Cap?
Yes.
Ms. Zoning?
Yes.
Mr. Zabel?
Yes.
Motion carries, and we'll go forward to the trustees for final approval.
And that meeting, because of Election Day, that meeting has been moved. It'll be November 8th, a Wednesday, and that will be at 6 o'clock.
Okay. Okie doke. Is there anything else we need to know? Will we have a meeting next month?
We will have one in November, and I believe everybody got back with Marie regarding the 15th, so because of the trustees meeting kind of bumping us.
And I know terms must expire this year. Do we know?
I'm sorry?
Do we know whose term expires this year, or who might need to reapply or whatever if they want to?
I'm almost thinking it's Mr. Creaky or Mr. King.
But you'll communicate that with them appropriately?
Yeah,
I don't know what the timeline for the trustees, but I would assume they'd want to do something in December. Yeah. So if you could
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
If I get a chance tonight.
It's that time of year.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Even though it doesn't seem like it. Is there anything else that people, you had a question?
November 8th has been moved to the 15th?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't care.
Anything else from members of the commission? So a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I will second that motion. Call the roll, please.
Yes.
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 So here's what I really want to know.
Thank you.
What does anybody know about the people who are running for trustee? Well, I know that. I know that. I'm happy about it. I want to know about the other two. I can't